Welcome to Women's Sports Weekly, where women's sports happens every day, but we talk about it once a week. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Carolyn. Women's Sports Weekly is a podcast where we discuss the latest news, explore interesting stories, and share our love for women's sports. Follow us on Instagram at Women's Sports Weekly Pod. So Danielle, last week we introduced a really exciting thing at Women's Sports Weekly. We are hosting a March Madness bracket.
Yes, I'm so excited.
So although you can't make your bracket yet, you can sign up online.
And I do recommend that people do sign up early just so it's less stressful when the brackets actually go live.
Exactly. You don't have to think about setting up your account. So it's very simple. All you need to do is go onto our Instagram, Women's Sports Weekly Pod, and tap the link in our bio. From there, you're going to see a link to join the Women's Sports Weekly March Madness bracket. It is a CBS bracket. So you have to have a CBS login. You can create one and sign up, or you can log in with an existing account. Once all the teams have their seeds, then you can go in and make your picks. There's going to be more details to come on the prize for the winner, but we want you to have access to it now so that you can go in, share with your friends. You just need to follow us on Instagram, follow the link, and begin to register to have your bracket with us.
Yes, let's go. March Madness is upon us. It is officially March.
We will have a prize, like I mentioned. It's going to be small, but there will be a prize for the winner. So you want to make sure that you sign up, share it with your friends, and let's get this started. Okay, let's get into the highlight reel for this week.
All right. Well, to kick us off, first and foremost, it is Women's History Month. So just wanted to say happy Women's History Month. Obviously, we talk about women's sports every week, so this is a great time of year for us.
I feel like our podcast is a dedication to women's history every day.
Yes, and I love it.
In my wildest fantasies, I think our podcast could eventually be a part of women's history.
Wow. That would be amazing. I don't think we're there yet, but who knows? After
Dream big.
episode 7, it could happen.
All right, let's get into it.
So first highlight, I saw Sha'Carri Richardson, who, for those of you who might not know, she is the 100-meter world champion. Yes, I said world champion. So technically speaking, I guess she's the fastest woman in the world. She had a recent collab with Nike, and I get to practice my French again today.
Hold on. Did you practice this before? Because we didn't.
No, I forgot. So you're going to have to help me out here.
I don't know if I can help.
Nike recent collab with French luxury brand Jacques Mus, titled Nike X Jacques Mus Spring 2024, celebrating athletes' style and self-expression. Do you think I said that right?
I have no idea.
Okay. If anyone excelled at French more than I did, you can let us know what you thought of that. We are expected to see her in the Olympics this year.
Yes.
On top of this wonderful collab, and she already works with Nike and has a deal with them. So this is I'm assuming part of that they chose her to be the face of this, and what great timing going to Paris. Yeah. For the Olympics. So,
and she is like a fashion icon. She always has crazy colored hair, which always looks fabulous with whatever she's wearing. Her nails are always perfectly done and extra long, and she's always wearing an outfit. Her outfits, sometimes on our Instagram, we posted Flojo, one of the most prolific track stars for the U.S., Florence Griffith Joyner, and Sha'Carri Richardson reminds me so much of her in the way that she kind of pushes the limit on her style.
Would you call her a fashionista?
Oh, yes. A trendsetter.
Yes.
Sha'Carri maybe not obviously. Sha'Carri Richardson did not attend the Tokyo Olympics, which were supposed to be held in 2020. Didn't actually happen until 2021. Even though she qualified due to failing a drug test, she failed for THC. Don't want to get too much into it, but THC is not a performance-enhancing drug. She owned it, and I just hope she dominates. I hope she comes out in this Paris Olympics and just shows everyone why she's the fastest woman in the world.
Yeah, me too, definitely. And to your point of her long nails and her style, I was reading up on this collab a little bit, and the teaser was that showing the purse with just her arm, and people recognized her tattoos and her long nails because she's known for some of that stuff.
I love
and then
that.
they revealed that, yes, it was indeed her. So I thought that was pretty cool tease. And I think it's going to be a cool collab. I myself am not much of a fashionista, but love to see the Nike brand going out with a French luxury brand.
Your fashion has come a long way in the 8 years that we've been together.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You should have seen me in high school. All right. Moving on from there. Women's lacrosse season has officially started for NCAA Division I. Big game this past week. Number 3 Northwestern beat number 1 Boston College 14-11. Early on in the season, obviously, rankings are going to be changing a lot, but to see 2 top teams face off at the start and a very exciting game,
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool.
And this was a rematch of last season's national championship match.
Yes, that is.
Who won that?
Northwestern won that 18-6. So much closer game.
And it's interesting, and we've talked about rankings before, but it's interesting that Northwestern won the national championship last year, ranked number 3 coming into the season, while Boston College was ranked number 1. And the Northwestern, they beat Boston College this year on February 29th at Boston College. So that's a big early season win for them.
For sure. And I was looking into it a little more. Northwestern had 20 shots on goal compared to Boston College's 17 shots on goal. So they were putting those goalies to work.
Yeah, I've been thinking about shots on goal more as I get into researching soccer. And it makes sense, right? Like the more pressure you put on the goalie, the more you make them work, the more chance you have that you're going to score. But I've never really thought of shots on goal as a really important stat. Like you want to get a high number of shots on goal, because if you have a high number of shots on goal, that means one of them's going to have to go through.
I'm kind of familiar with that as a goalie in high school for soccer. That's definitely something I focused on. So I was curious to look into that. Obviously, a lot of goals were scored 14-11. A player from each team had 5 goals.
Wow.
Obviously, there were more than that, but wanted to highlight Izzy Skane from Northwestern and Rachel Clark from Boston College, who is a junior from Pennsylvania. So I'm sure there'll be some players to watch this year.
One thing I learned about lacrosse recently is that it's currently one of the 9 sports that has been invited to present a case for inclusion at the Olympics in 2028. And those Olympics are going to be held in Los Angeles.
I did not know this.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
From what I read, it's most likely that it's going to be at the Olympics in 2028. So maybe we're going to see people like Izzy Skane and Rachel Clark find their way onto the U.S. lacrosse team. That would be so cool.
Yeah, you never know. Definitely exciting to start watching lacrosse as spring sports have kicked off.
We also need to talk about the Iowa-Ohio State game in women's basketball.
Yes, what an exciting game. I was looking forward to this one this week for a few reasons. Last time Ohio State and Iowa faced off, it was a very exciting game, and Ohio State came out on top. Iowa, on their home court, won 93-83, and that crowd, as per usual, was electric.
Senior day, college game day, they had all the things going on. And a really exciting senior day for Caitlin Clark, who announced this past week that she was going to go to the WNBA.
Yes, that has to be a huge weight lifted off her shoulders, and to be able to actually enjoy senior day and not be like, well, are you coming back or are you? So yeah, I thought that was good too.
Classic Caitlin Clark fashion, had 35 points. In the game, she officially beat the D1 scoring record, passing Pete Maravich.
Yes,
very cool.
Pistol Pete. So she now officially holds the all-time scoring record for NCAA
Division I.
Yes, men's or women's. And Lynette Woodard, who we have talked about before, was there to watch her break the all-time scoring record. And she was just she just looked so happy when they were interviewing her. And I'm sure when she played, given that the NCAA wasn't even recognizing women's sports, for her to see a packed stadium like that and just how far we've come in women's sports must have been really cool for her.
Yeah, and she paved that way. I think with stats, it gets tricky, right? Because we want to honor the people who came before. We want to honor the Pearl Moores, the Pete Maraviches. They came from really different times. and were playing under totally different circumstances, and they paved the way for a Caitlin Clark to come along and break these records. And the stat alone doesn't tell the full story, right? We know that Pearl Moore was scoring points when there was no 3-point line. The same with Pete Maravich. He did it in 3 years. And we can't say that one record is better than the other, because that would like be saying, oh, since softball uses different bats, that a record now in softball doesn't count for a record back in the day. You just take the stat for what it is, and we also create the time and space to talk about why we're honoring the people in the past as well. Caitlin Clark beating a record gives us an opportunity to honor all the people before her.
Yes, and to that point, Pearl Moore is actually still on top.
Yes.
Although it's not NCAA, but she had a total of 4,061 points. So I'm curious to see if Caitlin has it in her. We're headed into tournament play, and who knows how far they'll go. But to that point, it's nice to see that other women are being recognized, and all the athletes who have all those records.
Just a great day, and Caitlin Clark can say it now. D1 top scorer all time.
Yes, and getting that out of the way before playoffs start also has to be very nice.
Yeah, everything else now is just like a cherry on top.
The last highlight of the week, I mentioned I was very excited for the Notre Dame versus Virginia Tech game this week.
Yes.
Notre Dame was this past week ranked number 17 in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Virginia Tech, also a past Final Four team last year, number 5 in the country. I'm wearing my Fighting Irish shirt again. I wore this on game day for good luck.
Wow.
And Notre Dame won 71-58. I was pumped.
They put on a little bit of a clinic.
Yeah. I mean, Virginia Tech did not look as good as they have, but Notre Dame looked really good. And sometimes when teams play really well, they make the other team look bad. So I think it's more of that. That's what happened. Like, we talk about Liz Kitley a lot. She had a rough game.
She did.
But I think that's a testament to how Westbeld was playing defense against her and just really doing a good job. I also talked about last week the matchup of Georgia Amor and Hannah Hidalgo.
Yep.
Hannah Hidalgo, a freshman on Notre Dame, played absolutely unbelievable. During that game, she beat the all-time freshman scoring record for women's ACC, which I thought was really exciting. And to break a record and win a big game like that on the same night has to be a really cool feeling.
We've been talking about the freshmen in women's basketball all year. She is the real deal.
She looked great, and she's been looking great. Obviously, we've seen her play throughout the season, but it's really a toss-up on which freshman. We talk about Juju Watkins all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about Hannah a lot. And there's other freshmen, Michaela Williams from LSU. Yeah. These freshmen are a force to be reckoned with. Malaysia Fulwiley.
I mean, we could go on and on.
But Hannah had an incredible game. Really fun to watch Notre Dame playing well at this time of the year. Yes. Sonia Citron looked good. Westbeld looked good. So just exciting to see those players. And I just love Coach Ivy. So I think she does a great job with those players. And it was a packed crowd.
Yes. And Coach Ivy was just named assistant coach of the USA basketball team.
Cool. I did not see that. I missed that.
Yes, she was named this past week. I'm so
happy for her.
And she had nothing but great things to say about Hannah Hidalgo. And I love her as a coach. Also,
same.
Hottest coach in the NCAA.
I agree. And her outfits, I know we talk about outfits a lot, but how can you not?
I know.
Always on point.
I want to make it clear, when I say that someone's attractive and when I say that someone's hot, I'm not taking away from how good of a coach she is
she's
too.
An incredible
but for
coach.
her to be that good of a coach and that hot, it seems unfair to the rest of us.
Yeah. Go Irish. I'm still going for them. Yeah, that was the highlights for the week.
Okay, Danielle, let's get into the outside of the line segment of today, where we're going to talk about NIL deals.
Yes. And for those who might not know, because I always forget this, NIL means name, image, and likeness.
Yes.
It allows the players to profit from their own name rather than the NCAA. And it started a few years ago in 2021.
And this is important because the NCAA makes a shit ton of money.
Yes.
And in the past, college players were not making any money from the NCAA promoting them playing. Like, could you imagine Caitlin Clark right now with the amount of tension she's getting, not having an NIL deal where she could
can
make money?
imagine because there's plenty of players who
Yes.
never did. Yeah, it's
like
actually
the Maya Moores,
harder
Sabrina
for me to.
Ionescu's.
It's honestly harder for me to believe that college kids are getting paid.
Yes,
Because
it is
for
crazy.
so long people were like, oh, they won't be as exciting to watch. They'll just care about the money. I didn't really form my own opinions on that, and I would just kind of agree. But now I look at it, I'm like, that is so ridiculous. These women should be getting paid for the product they're putting out there. And yes, why is the NCAA getting all this money? Like, they should be able to partner with different brands. And not only does that help the player, but it also helps the brand, because there's a ton of people who follow these players who might not know certain brands, and now they will.
That's exactly right. I think people were nervous about it, and I think there's still some learning that we need to do to make it work for everyone. And I think in the long run, it's going to be a great thing for the players.
One of the things that happened recently that I wanted to dive into, Aaliyah Edwards, who is a player for UConn women's basketball team. Yep. We've talked about her a little bit in the past. She recently signed a deal with Adidas. She's from Canada, so she's currently on a student visa.
And student visas are weird with, like, if you can work. Like, I remember I had to get a student visa when I studied abroad in Italy, and it was like, you cannot work in Italy. You can only be a student in Italy. And so I can imagine that this might get a little weird. Tell us about it.
She had to go back to Canada to negotiate because she cannot negotiate or do anything NIL related on U.S. soil.
So she can't do like any business
Correct.
on U.S. soil.
Not at all. International students can make like passive income in the U.S. So, for example, they can get a little money if someone buys a jersey with their name on it, for example, at the bookstore. But that's not them doing anything for that money.
Got it.
And okay, that's not really passive. NIL. Correct.
It. But they can't be signing a contract with Adidas.
Right. So this Adidas contract, because Adidas is a global company, was signed and negotiated in Canada. And reporters wanted to talk to her about it this past week. And she said, I can't talk about it because I don't want to jeopardize my student visa. How scary is that? She is
so scary.
A college student who just signed, I'm assuming, a huge deal with Adidas, knowing Adidas is so big. And she's being smart. She's like, I'm not talking about this in the US because I'm not going to jeopardize my student visa. She has not said whether or not she'll go back to UConn next year or declare for the WNBA. And she actually said she's going to wait until the end of the season to do so.
Okay.
That being said, if she comes back another year, she needs that visa. So she can't mess around right now. So I'm sure that's very nerve-wracking on top of everything else going on.
Yep. It's like one thing to mess with the NCAA and then like a whole other thing to mess with immigration in the U.S.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that. And then I imagine her at Niagara Falls with an Adidas person just taking that little boat over to the Canada side to sign it. I know that's not how it happened.
No,
but that's
I'm
what
sure
I like
not.
to picture in my head.
Her and Nika Mule, so Nika Mule from Croatia, same deal. And they've openly talked about when they came to UConn, NIL wasn't a thing.
Yep.
So they did not go to UConn with the impression like, should I or should I not? Because I can be making money, but I won't. Because it came into play, I think, the year after, I think their sophomore year.
Yeah, 2021. That makes sense.
So Nika Mule, I was reading up on it a little bit. She made a comment of like, I never had it, so nothing's been taken away from me, and that's not why I came. I came to UConn to play basketball.
Yeah.
Yes, they're saying this, and I'm also sure it's hard. You have AZ Fudd. She works with multiple brands like Bose, Chipotle, Buick, just to name a few. There's more.
Like making a lot of money.
Yes. And then you have Paige Beckers, Gatorade, Nike, just to name some of the big ones. Also Bose. So you have your teammates making all of this money on these deals. I can't imagine that doesn't mess with you a little bit.
And this is what I'm saying. When policies are introduced, when new rules are introduced, I think the instinct is like, for people to take a stance and say, this is going to be all good or this is going to be all bad.
Yep.
And I so want, in so many ways, to move away from that, not just in women's sports, like in so many other different areas as well. I wish we could move away from black or white thinking, Because yes, NIL deals are great. And then when we start going through the process, we begin to notice, oh, our international students aren't able to monetize because they're on student visas. So it's like, okay, we're learning as we go here. Let's make the changes we need in order, even though Nika Mule didn't come here to make money, she should still be able to make money, because just like every other person on her team, people want to know about her. People want to buy things from her because of her name, because of her image, because of her likeness. And NIL deals are interesting because the state can make their own rules. So
yes, Connecticut politicians are working to come up with a rule where international students can get paid more. I saw that.
Which is great. But if your state isn't creating rules that are protective of the students, then it's going based off of the school. So every school could be doing it differently. So that means each state could be doing it differently. And then if there's no law in place, then each school could be doing it differently. We have to have a little bit more cohesiveness, because if everybody's doing it differently, to me, that means that there could be some disparity. We want to make sure that these rules and regulations that are put in place are helpful for all the students, and we don't have people picking and choosing just based off of where they can get the best NIL deal.
Obviously, we are not in positions to make those decisions.
No.
But I do hope something good comes out of it. And just NIL as a whole, just this booming thing that occurred a few years ago, and I feel like more and more it becomes more relevant. Just curious, thinking back, we both played sport in college. On top of everything else that you were balancing in college, do you think you could have handled or would have wanted to handle NIL on top of all that?
Would I have wanted to? Would I have wanted to make money?
Of course.
Hell yes. I was so broke in college. And this is the thing. You have students. Some students are getting a full scholarship. Most student athletes are not on full scholarship.
Correct.
So if you gave me the opportunity to make money based off of my own name, I would have loved that. Would I have made any money? Hell no.
I mean, me neither. But is it something, do you think you could have balanced that on top of everything else?
I think if you are playing at an elite level, I think it's great business preparation. So
True.
It is a lot of planning and more to add to your plate. But I wish, instead of some of the classes that we took in high school and college, we were taking classes on how to manage our finances, on how to promote ourselves, on how to build a brand for ourselves. Would you have wanted, would that have stressed you out, or?
I think it would have added extra stress to my plate. I, of course, would have wanted to make money. If you put the option in front of me in this moment, I would say, no questions asked, yes.
Yep.
Thinking back to my college experience, I wouldn't, at this point, looking back, wouldn't have wanted to add that to my plate. I'm glad I didn't have that extra stress. As a Division III athlete, would have I been making NIL deals anyways? No, but let's just say I was at a higher level. I at least know the student athlete experience. I don't think I would have wanted that extra pressure.
We're seeing more and more schools now create avenues to help players do exactly that, which is the smart thing to do. LSU, for example, their women's basketball team, they have a director of women's basketball player, personnel, and influence. So that person's job is to help players make informed decisions on NIL opportunities presented to them that can enhance their personal brand. I mean, that's what you need to do. You need to put people in place to help your players be like, okay, here's how you build your own personal brand if you don't know how to do it. And then here's how you speak to someone about a contract, and I'll help you look through that contract. That I think is cool.
Yes.
Those are the skills that you need
crazy.
to learn.
It sounds crazy.
It sounds crazy, but then I'm like, we're too old, right?
Yeah. I'm not saying it's a bad thing and I don't agree with it. It just sounds crazy. Haley Jones, who played for Stanford and now is in the WNBA, I've heard her talk about NIL before when she was still in college, and she's had conversations with Aaliyah Boston, who played for South Carolina, is now in the WNBA. Yep. They would work with their moms. They call their moms their momagers, like managers, but momagers. And I love that. But not everyone has a parent figure who maybe has those skills or has that background that can make those decisions. So yes, LSU is smart, and LSU has some of the top athletes in terms of NIL deals and what those athletes are making. So they're obviously doing something right.
This is where I think the NIL can get a little bit tricky, because you have, where I think it's great is that you have some students who come from socioeconomic backgrounds where their family is not making a lot of money. And they come in and they have this amazing talent and they're able to use their name, image, and likeness and make a lot of money in college. Mm-hmm. And I think where the NIL could go wrong is if students feel financial pressure to provide for their family while they're in college, while they're still so young, and they're making decisions that are not maybe the best decisions for them, for their professional career, for their academic career, but they're making decisions based on the amount of money they could potentially make at a school because they have people that they need to take care of. Then the question becomes is how do we help those players and those families, because they're the ones who can most benefit from it and they're the ones who could be most exploited from it.
Yeah, I think that's where having someone on your team, even though I said it sounds crazy, that does not mean I don't think it's a good idea. I think that's where that comes into play, because these people, that is their job. Yep. So they can help guide student athletes to making the right decision. To the point you just made, a lot of times people go pro and they do just that. They don't make good financial decisions. So if they're able to be coached at the college level and then they go off as pro, they might have a better understanding of how to make financial decisions, how to save money versus just spend everything right away. So yeah, I think having that on your team is very important, and it might take some of the stress away from the players and then they can focus on the game still.
And most players are not making a crazy ton of money in NIL deals.
No.
Some
there are players who are making a crap ton.
Yes, and I want to get into those. But it is really great for the players who are making like a middle level of money, whatever that is, to be like, okay, this is the first time that I've had money in my pocket. It's smaller percentages of money where maybe they could mess up in a way or spend all their paycheck in one weekend, and then they can figure out how to manage from there. So I feel like the NIL, if it's done right, if they have the correct staff in place, is a great opportunity for kids to fail forward and learn in a way that's a little bit more manageable and a little bit less risk.
For sure. And it beats the work study jobs I was doing in college. Intramural refs, working at the fitness center, making minimum wage. So I do think in that regard, NIL, for many reasons, is very valuable to the players.
We are seeing men make significantly more money, but we are seeing women make real big bucks in NIL
more
deals.
Than they'll probably make in their professional career without these NIL deals. For the WNBA, for example, is going to be less than what some of these players are already making in NIL deals.
Yeah, and I want to get into that a little bit. There's been this talk of Caitlin Clark, should she stay or should she go? And this past week, she announced that she was going to head to the WNBA after the season. And she will take those NIL deals with her.
Yes, there was a lot of talk of, if she goes to the WNBA, she's not going to make a lot of money. All the NIL deals are going away. And I'm like, how does that make any sense? These brands want to stick with her name.
And she will. Her salary in the WNBA will be, in comparison to what NBA players make, so low.
Yes.
Which is where we have an issue. But she's going to continue to have those NIL deals. And that's where I think the NIL is also a really big positive, because the hope is that if we can get these students attention, if we can get them money, if we can get people interested in paying them to wear your brand or to do all these different things, Caitlin Clark's going to go into the WNBA. Angel Reese, whenever she decides to head into the WNBA, they're going to go and they're going to take the people who have been watching them. And I hope this is true. I hope every single Caitlin Clark fan that watches every game of her playing at Iowa then goes on to watch every game with her at the Indiana Fever, which is probably where she's headed. I'm excited for that. She's going to be playing with Aaliyah Boston.
The draft has not happened yet, but that is all the talk. That is probably what's going to happen.
So she is going to take all of that with her. And when Angel Reese decides to go, and all of these big names, when Cameron Brink decides to go.
Aaliyah Edwards, who we talked about.
They're going to go into the WNBA. And the hope is with all these NIL deals, with all this attention, that they lift everyone up around them as well. So as much as people are interested in Caitlin Clark, they're going to be interested in every other WNBA player that is on the team.
Right, because it will bring more attention to them.
Exactly. And that Caitlin Clark coming to the league is actually good for every WNBA player, because hopefully you get more eyes to watch. And I'm not just talking about Caitlin Clark. I'm talking about any big name that comes from college. We need to see that conversion from college to WNBA.
And it's increasing. The past couple years, it's definitely increased in viewership. We still have a long ways to go.
And I think NIL is helping with that. Like, I think NIL, them getting paid is going to help with that, because now they're in more places. They're not just only being seen on the NCAA whenever you see an NCAA tournament. They're being seen everywhere. They're on your Gatorade commercial. They're on your State Farm commercial. People get to see them more, and then they head into the WNBA, and then hopefully people continue to watch, and then they find other players that they like. That's my favorite thing about watching, is be like, oh, I came here for Caitlin Clark, but actually Natasha Cloud on the Phoenix Mercury is amazing, and I'm going to watch her all the time. More eyes from the NIL means more eyes following them to the WNBA, which means more eyes for everyone else. So hopefully this lifts everybody up. That's my hope.
One of the things I also wanted to talk about is how much are these players making off of these athletes? How much exactly are some of them making in these NIL deals? Now, looking at different sources, it is a little confusing when you look at it. Do you know which women's athletes have the highest NIL valuation?
Well, what's a valuation? Well, like, so what does that even mean?
So there's this website On3 for NIL, and it's updated weekly. Valuation meaning an estimate of monetary value of their NIL deal. So this acts as a guide for potential ROI for brands and return on investment.
Time out.
Return on investment.
For us peasants out there, you need to tell us what ROI is.
Return on investment. So what is the return on investment for a brand working with an athlete?
Okay.
And what is the return on the investment for the athlete working with a certain brand? It kind of works as a guide to show that.
Cool.
So I took a look at the top 4 athletes making the most NIL, or when we're looking at it this way, this has to do with valuation. So top numbers that I was looking at online. 3 of the 4 are LSU. So to your point earlier, you were saying LSU does a really good job.
They have someone dedicated.
Right. Specific people dedicated. So it's obviously paying off for them. Livy Dunn is on the LSU gymnastics team. Her valuation is $3.5 million.
Wow. And the interesting thing about Livy Dunn is she is like an influencer on Instagram. She was an influencer.
Helps.
Yes.
Her following on Instagram is insane.
It helps amazingly, because those connections, and this is the other piece that I want to get into. When you're niche, when you market to a particular brand, that is so good for people who want to invest in you, for brands that want to invest in you, because you are marketing to a very specific brand, which I think she is. And like, she's also very hot. So I'm sure she's got tons of followers who follow her because she's hot, and she's smart as hell. She is able to get people to invest in her because she markets to a very particular brand. And instead of being a generalist and covering way too much, she covers a very specific area. And then people are able to be like, can you show our brand off? Because we know the people who follow you will buy exactly what you say.
Yes.
Very cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Hold on. Say that number again.
3.5 million.
That is wacko tobacco.
Yes. Caitlin Clark is number 2 at 3.1 million.
Wow.
This is where it gets a little confusing, because in other sources I saw she's making about 900,000 a year on NIL deals, but this valuation site talks about, I guess, projected.
And I think
so. I just get a little confused by that. But according to this, that's updated weekly, 3.1 million.
Yeah. And I think probably within the past 2 weeks, her valuation has skyrocketed.
So I just want to caveat that in terms of what's actually being made and projected, Caitlin Clark from Iowa women's basketball, 3.1 million. Angel Reese, another huge name in the basketball world, LSU women's basketball, 1.7 million. Flau'jae Johnson, also from LSU women's basketball team, 1.1 million.
And this is where, again, I think NIL deals are really great because she has her toe dipped in a lot of different areas. She raps.
Yep.
So if NIL deals were not allowed, she would not be able to sign any record label with anyone because that would be a violation of NCAA rules. But because of NIL, she's able to have a rap career. She's able to have her modeling career. She's able to do all the things she does and play basketball.
I don't know how Flage personally, how she does it.
No, me neither.
And from her freshman year to this year, she got even better at basketball and is also rapping more. So incredible the things these student athletes are doing. These women and these athletes, these student athletes, some of them are making a lot of money and also maintaining, doing a great job on the court or on the floor or on whatever it is, the field. Kudos to them because I really don't know how they do it.
I think in the long run, and I think even now, like it's had immediate positive impacts. I think it's only going to have positive impacts moving forward. And there's some tweaks that need to be worked out as well.
As in all things.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing it. Danielle, as we wrap up today, what are you looking forward to this week?
This week, starting Thursday, March 7th into Saturday, March 9th, the Division I Indoor Track and Field Championships take off. It will be held at the track at New Balance in Boston, Massachusetts. It will be available on the ESPN network, so it will be streamed on the different network. And there will be 16 men's and 16 women's events. Thank you, Title IX.
I always think indoor is interesting because they feel like they run and then they run into things.
Well,
like
that is one event, Carolyn, that we watched on TV one day.
But it just feels like there's not enough space for them. I understand why they do the indoor events because obviously weather. Maybe people prefer it because you don't have to worry about weather. And I always look at them and I'm like, it looks cramped in there and they are running into things. And that just doesn't feel always very safe to me.
That is true. I'm actually excited to see the mile times because I'm always blown away by how fast people can run a mile. And that's one of the events. Good luck to all those athletes.
Very cool. This week, I am looking forward to women's basketball. All of the conference tournaments start this week for women's basketball.
And where are they held? Vegas, I think?
The Pac-12 is held in Vegas.
Yes.
Everyone is held in a different area.
Gotcha.
It's going to be very interesting. So I'm really going to be looking to see how people do in their conference tournament because for me, when I'm designing my bracket, I really focus on the conference tournament. I don't care as much about your record throughout the year. I want to see, are you getting hot now?
That's what it's all about. It's March Madness. It's conference playoffs. It doesn't matter what you did at the first game of the season.
Yeah, and this is my favorite part of tournament season is your wins don't matter. Your record doesn't matter. It matters in the sense of where
getting to the tournament and
where you're seeded. And then once we start playing, it doesn't matter. You just have to win. We were just talking about Pac-12. To see Arizona is on a little hot streak right now. Like they're gonna make some moves in there.
And we talked about this earlier this year. It is a grind at this point of the season.
Yeah.
March Madness, I think, gets players and championship play gets them pumped up a little bit more. But the fact that Arizona maybe wasn't doing so well and they grinded it out and now they're like winning games and beating higher ranked teams, this is the time that matters. So definitely excited to see how the conference tournaments shake out.
I feel like I shouldn't have said that this is what I include on my bracket because now my competitiveness is coming in and I don't want people to steal my strategy for how I fill out a bracket for their bracket because we will be going head to head in this Women's Sports Weekly bracket that we're hosting that you need to sign up for.
Usually people who know nothing about anything do the best when they fill out their brackets.
So true, which is why if you're hesitant to join our Women's Sports Weekly bracket, you should just join.
Yes, you do not need to know really any knowledge about any team because it is an absolute crapshoot.
Yes.
In the best way. The teams are just winning and lower seeds that you don't even think that they go on these runs. So that is a great point. Even if you're not super familiar with maybe basketball or how things have been going this year, definitely join the bracket. You could win.
Yes. And if you listen to Women's Sports Weekly and you're like, I listen, but I don't watch basketball games, you can still fill out a bracket and you can actually pick a little thing on it that says like fill out the bracket for me.
Ah, that's no fun.
It isn't, but if you're hesitant and don't know if you want to join or not, you can do that and just do that as well.
Yep. We want everyone involved. So whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. We don't want it to just be me, you, my brother-in-law, my sister, and your sisters. You have a chance to win a prize.
You just never know.
You just never know. So if you're on the fence
like
about
the lottery.
yes, please join our Women's Sports Weekly bracket. It will allow us to get to know you better. It will allow us to trash talk. It will allow us to celebrate you when you win. And I truly mean this. We want to get to know the people who are listening to us.
For sure.
It is such an honor to have anyone listening to us.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are able to participate in this bracket, it would really be such an honor to have our listeners who spend time listening to our voices be part of this with us.
Yeah, be our friends.
Be our friends. All right. That is it for this week. We will see you next week on Women's Sports Weekly. In the meantime, watch Women's Sports, rate the pod on Spotify and Apple. That helps us a ton and gets our podcast out to more people who may be interested, and share the podcast with your friends. Please keep sending us topics you want us to cover on Instagram at Women's Sports Weekly Pod. Thanks so much for joining us.
And see you again next week.
Oh my gosh, hold on. Before we end, we have been releasing on Tuesdays. We should be saying, see you next Tuesday.
No.
Why not?
Okay. See you all next week.
Opportunity missed. Okay. Bye, everyone.